thank you for joining us. I hope that you're getting a lot of great things today. I'm Dr. Jessica Redcade Schoch, and if you'd like to connect with me, you can do that in the app, or you can scan my fancy online business card. Or if you'd like a traditional business card, I have them laying here by the projector as well. I'm really excited that I have a book coming out later. So on social media, if you follow me for the IBAC strategies that we'll talk about briefly in this presentation today, you'll see when that comes out as well. So I'm the Vice President at RoboKind product owner, and I'm also the author of RoboKind Phonics and numeracy and speech articulation. But I've been in education for 20 years as a classroom teacher and as a professor. So I get it. I'm with all of you here. We come to these conferences and we're looking for things that we can take back and that we can use in our classrooms. And so that's what I want to do. Today, I want to take research and I want to translate it into 4 things that you can leave with and use tomorrow in your classroom. But probably not tomorrow because it's Saturday, and some of you are still at the conference, so hopefully you can implement these strategies on Monday when you get back into your classroom and everything like that too. But one of the things specifically I want to focus on is teaching phonics. And as you know, in your classroom, teaching phonics is really difficult. And fortunately, we have a lot of research now of brains and these scans of brains that show us what's happening, like when students are learning to read and learning phonics. And so now we know why it's difficult to teach phonics to students. If you look here at these areas of the brain, you'll see that when you teach reading, this is what happens in the brain. These 3 areas are activated for teaching reading. 2 of these areas of the brain are ready as soon as you're born. So the first area is the area where you can hear sounds, or phonies, which are the smallest unit of sounds. So you're already able to process sounds. The other part of the brain that you already have ready to go when you're first born is the grapheme section of the brain, or the visual representation of the brain that freaks that phoneme and makes a visual representation of that sound. But the third part we have seen with research, when you scan the brain, doesn't get activated, where we have phonics instruction, where you can find phonemes and you find graphemes, where you're providing the sound with the actual visual representation. But the International Dyslexia Association says that to make that connection between those 2 areas of the brain, we need to provide students with explicit, systematic phonics instruction, and all students need to receive these foundational skills. So when you're hearing explicit, that means that you're directly telling students this is what it is, and showing them lots of models and repetition and examples of it. When you're looking at systematic instruction, you're looking at ensuring that students understand a logical sequence of teaching them how to read, that it makes sense for them. So these structured literacy approaches align with the science of reading, which is basically just the body of research showing us how do we teach students. And we need to take that and put that into practice and align it with our IEP goals and our standards in our classrooms for our students, and use evidence-based practices, which is why our curriculum's case endorsed, because we use these evidence-based practices. If you've seen their booth when they're here, for the case endorsements and things like that too. So at the end of this, you're going to have lots of resources that you can access that show you how to align your curriculum with IEP standards, the science of reading, and applications and different things. I'll give all of this to you at the end, so you'll have those things here as well. So the first thing I want to share with you, Monday when you get back to the classroom, you can look at implementing a sound wall or a vowel valley in your classroom. Research is super clear. We need to ensure that we use sound walls and vowel valleys in our classroom to teach phonics. And the reason you change in education from word walls to sound walls is because it helps this explicit and systematic instructions of phonics in your classroom. So if you've heard of word walls previously, that just means that you have A to Z listed in your classroom, and under each one you have all of these sight words that you're teaching. That's different than a sound wall or bow valley. A sound wall or a bow valley is used in your classroom to make sure that you're explicitly giving a visual to the student to know and understand how the mouth looks when it's producing that specific phony or that sound in your classroom. The reason a sound wall in bow valley is systematic, which we talked about is important to use in your classroom, is because it's the sequence of order of visual representation of how you produce the different sounds. So first, a sound wall, and if you picked one up when you came in, you have this like in front of you, the consonant sound wall. If you didn't, at the end, you'll have all my resources, I promise. Plus you have my contact information now so you can find me. But for a consonant sound wall, what we do is we group everything together about where you produce the sound in your mouth. And so they're organized in a way that helps students grasp the concept and hold on to this, and we get retention, and then they can remember and understand that systematic way that we're instructing them with. In addition to that, we're showing them, like, here's a visual of what your mouth should look like. Here's an example of a word that starts with that sound. And then we're telling the student if that sound is voiced or unvoiced. If you look at your sound wall and you look at the letters P and B, you see they are placed side by side. The reason for that is because they both visually look the same. You do the same thing with your mouth for both letters. However, one letter is voiced and one is unvoiced. So you teach students, and you see the little like speech bubble next to the one that's voiced on the sound wall that I provided to you. So you teach students that you're going to learn the letter P sound, right? Say they make the sound. When they do, they put their hand on their throat right here and feel if there's a vibration or not. So do that now. You make the P sound. You feel your throat is not making that vibration sound. Now do the same formation with your mouth, but do it with the B sound. Do you feel your vibration? Yeah, because that's a voiced sound. So the reason you're also going to see the cards grouped together the way that they are is because we're teaching students that your mouth is formed the same way, but one is voiced and one is unvoiced. So this is a consonant sound wall, but then on the back of your paper, you're going to see a vowel valley. Vowel valley is helpful because the vowel valley introduces sounds based on how you're going to be moving your mouth to produce those sounds. So in your classrooms, everybody probably heard this growing up too. I know that I did, and I know that I did this when I was in the classroom with my students too when I first started. Like I say, hey, the vowels are A, B, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, right? Well, there's actually 19 vowel sounds, right? So if you're using this vowel valley with your students, you're going to help them understand what all of those different sounds are that they're going to be coming across. And you see that it's in the shape of a valley, and the reason for that is because it's like your chin. If you start up at the very top with the vowel valley, you'll see that it makes for the sound E. You'll see that your chin is up, but as you go down through the vowel valley and you make the sounds, you see that your chin goes down. And so this valley is actually a visual representation of what your mouth is doing when you're producing the different sounds. And so that's why we group these together. So the research is very clear that if you're not using sound walls or vowel valleys in your classroom, you want to get this into with your students, but explicitly teaching each one so they have an understanding of what it is. With RoboKind Phonics, we have a digital sound wall, and I'm giving you access to this for 14 days for free at the end of this if you want to try it. But essentially how it works is when you click on one, it will play an example of the sound for you, and then with the audio clip. And then for the video, it shows you an X-ray video. So you're not just seeing like a video of how to produce the sound, you're seeing an X-ray. So it's so explicit and direct for you. So you definitely are understanding how to produce that sound. So the first strategy that you can take away from this, that research is super clear, you need to make sure that students are understanding those sounds and how they make sense and connect together, and then using those into your classroom. The second thing I want to share with you today based on research is that we know Well, my presentation's still going on there, so I'll move it along with us. Okay, so the next thing is that you want to make sure that students see themselves practicing these sounds in mirrors. So if you don't have mirrors in your classroom, but you're like a one-to-one tech classroom, or you can turn on those devices and turn on those cameras on your devices and use them as a camera meter. But what we want to have happen is we want students to be looking at their mouth, and we want the student to be practicing those sounds and looking at those examples. And then we want to make sure that we're giving the students the right prompting to go along with what they're seeing. So at the end of this session, when you scan, you'll be able to get a phoneme guide. So for each phoneme that you're instructing in your classroom, you're going to be able to see the directions that you need to tell the student, like, what are your lips doing? What is your tongue doing? What are your teeth doing with this sound? And so you can reference that. In addition, you're going to find an English language learner guide where you can look at students in their native language for each phoneme, and you can see like how, if they don't have that current sound in that language, different ways as a teacher that you can prompt them and help guide them through that process. So the second thing for the takeaway from today is I want you to refer to this phoneme guide after our session and pull it up and use it when students are looking in the mirror or looking at a device with the camera mirror on, to help make sure that students are getting that prompting that they need and guiding them there along the way. That takes us to the third thing that you can do in your classroom to help your students. The third thing that research is clear about is that it helps when you chunk material that you're teaching to students in your classroom. So this doesn't only apply to phonics, right? This applies to lots of concepts that we're teaching. But what you want to make sure that you do is, like, if you have a 30-minute lesson, that you strategically break it apart every like 5 minutes and make sure that those same skills that you're practicing are grouped together in the lesson. So when you get to the end of those 5 minutes, it also helps you with your pace. I have seen a lot of free service teachers, and like often when they're first starting out, like tracking their time management is difficult. And so one of the strategies that have really helped is by saying, I have to teach this lesson. If I break it up into 5-minute segments, I can check my pace in my lesson too. And I can see if I'm keeping like moving along and that we're getting this, and helps the students refocus by restating what you're teaching. Also, there's research that says some students can learn a concept one time and they get it. But students who are often neurodiverse, it can take up to like 44 times for them to grasp the same concept. So in the 30-minute lessons that I write and design, I try to give exposure 44 times like within that lesson, using different modality inputs. So the students are hearing it, they're seeing it, they have video models of it, but breaking that stuff apart is really going to help. Giving them little tokens or rewards, or if your students need it, you can take a sensory break. So at RoboKind, we had robot teaching assistants. Now we've transitioned to virtual avatars. So I give my students a break with my virtual avatar teaching assistant, Gemini, so they can get up and dance in the lesson. You can use lots of different ways to give your students breaks along the way, but the repetition matters, and chunking the material, and then making sure that you're aware and students need a break in the lesson too along the way. And that takes us to the fourth thing that's going to be the one which is the book that I told you I have coming out. As a part of my dissertation in the field of education, I coined the term IBACT. IBACT is interactive technology, and then it's combined with VACT, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile learning. So IBACT is a way to help students across various learning modalities and helping them learn. So at the beginning, I showed you a brain scan, and I showed you where like reading is happening, and it's only in 3 places. Well, what if in your classroom you weren't limited to that because you implemented IBACT techniques into your classroom, and you could light up the whole brain for your students? You could create new neural pathways for learning. So instead of just activating 3 spots of your students' grades, and sometimes that's only 2, because if you're not using explicit systematic instruction, they won't get the 3rd spot. But on top of that, activating all of these areas by using these different ways to reach your students in your classroom. So to do this, you would have flashcards, like 6 flashcards, like that would go along with the topic that you're teaching. So if you're teaching like the letter R, you would have R like flashcards with each of the different sounds, and then you would use these to take these flashcards across these different learning centers that I'm going to show to you. And you would have a choice menu in your classroom, because we know that increases intrinsic motivation when students can select which learning centers they want to use. So for the interactive technology, you can have students use this to practice with the spinner and practice saying the sounds. They can trace things using like a digital card to practice writing and recognizing the letter, or covering up the letter. And then at our RoboKind booth, if you stop by, you can see our virtual avatar teaching assistant, who gives another way for students to hear the concepts that they're learning along the way as well. Then you look at students who are learning in your classroom who prefer visual activities. There might be some visual learners in here too. So if you're looking at visual activities, this means that you like to see to learn. So a couple of activities that you can do, or learning centers to implement for this, would be like using invisible ink pens. So if you take this invisible ink pen and you write it on paper, and then you shine the light on it, it appears, and so the students can see it. So this is one type of visual activity you can use. Another idea is that you can use crayons, and you can do crayon rubbings over top of the letters, and you can have the students like see them as they come, they get revealed along the way. So these are some visual activities you could try. Let me share with you a couple auditory activities that you can try in your classroom. I'm sure you've all seen the little whisper phones before, so the students can whisper and practice saying the different words that they have here. And then the sound buttons, during the pandemic, it was difficult to get a hold of these because people use them for dog training too. But now we have these available again. These little sound buttons are great because when you tap on it, you can record what the word is, and then you can play it back. So you can match it with the different flashcards. And when you get to decoding, you can tap each one and you can hear each sound and put all of them back together. If you want to see a great example of this, on our RoboKind Phonics tab, there's a video of a student named Anthony using this. It's one of my favorite videos, so you can watch this in action of how it's being used. If you're using kinesthetic centers in your classroom, then that means that you're using the gross motor, like the whole body to move. And so for this, you would give students a ball, lay those flashcards out on the floor, and let them bounce it and practice saying it or locating the different ones, or using bead bags to help you too along the way. The next one that we have would be for your tactile learners. Tactile is different than kinesthetic because for tactile, you're looking at fine motor development. So students are developing their finger skills that help them with writing and tasks like this. So for this, you can use gel bags that you can lay over top of the flashcards for tracing. You can use Play-Doh or craft dough. Used to make a lot of different recipes that are out there in my classroom. And then the sand tray is great too, as long as you make a plan not to get things too messy in your classroom too along the way. But what I'd like you to do is remember that these are 4 different things that you can implement that are based on research that help you find evidence-based approaches that are big facts, to help these students learn and have great outcomes for your students. We have lots of research studies that demonstrate the effectiveness of using these things in your instruction with your students that I'd love for you to check out. Today, I want to give you access on your handout that you have. You can scan that QR code, or you can scan the one up here. But this is going to give you 14 days of a free trial for the Phonics program that gives you that digital sound wall, that digital Bell Valley. But more importantly, all of these things I talked about, if you go into the teacher resources from that free trial, you'll have access to these resources I was talking about with phoning guidance and instruction, the English language guidance, the aligned into standards and IEPs and evidence-based practice and the science of reading alignment. So we'd love for you to check it out. So I hope these things help you, and I hope you continue to enjoy the conference and you come back to your classrooms feeling excited to bring these research-based evidence to help your students learn and enjoy the process. Thank you.